Now, we're going to be talking about what brings America, or at least what we take out just before World War II. If anybody remembers the middle, now, when we talk about Roosevelt's foreign policy, it really mirrored Woodrow Wilson with this isolationist tendency. Sorry, guys, and this goal of neutrality. And much like Woodrow Wilson, we see a sort of fake neutrality where we're neutral in name only, but still giving supplies and money to the quote-unquote good guys. So Roosevelt openly expressed his favor for Allied victory, and he took a lot of steps to ready the U.S. to enter the war. And he was actually really influenced by Teddy Roosevelt, who was a big war hawk. He loved and thought America should be involved in any and every war they could possibly get involved in, and this rubbed off on FDR, who looked up to his older cousin. In 1937, FDR unsuccessfully tried to convince the war leaders to quarantine the aggressors. For those of you who remember who remember Global 2, you know that currently Europe is in the process of appeasement, which FDR fully is against. Everything changed in 1939 when we see the Nazi-Soviet pact and the invasion of Poland, which, again, if you remember Global 2, signals World War II in Europe. When World War II began in 1939, FDR got Congress to agree to a cash and carry policy. Now, we should note, especially when we talk about the AP test, that is a big term to be able to use on the exam, whether it's the short answer, something that you can quickly identify in the multiple choice, or something that you use in the essays. It's very, very likely that you might see an essay asking you to discuss America's foreign policies. One policy that we can talk about, or that you will be able to write about, should be cash and carry. Now, this would allow the U.S. to trade with the Allies, but not offer loans. Essentially, whatever they could pay for in cash and whatever they could carry out on their ships would be allowed to go to Europe. But unlike World War I, we would not be sending ships over to Europe, possibly because of a fear of U-boats and American deaths like we had in World War One. Now, not only did we allow the sale of guns and other materials to Europe, but we did also give them 50 old destroyers. We also allowed them to take control of different naval bases that we had secured in Western Europe. So we were very much pro-allies, but to the public and to the world, we declared that we were neutral. Now, the destroyer for bases deal is the most important action in reinforcement of our national defense that has been taken since the Louisiana Purchase. And again, this is FDR and his quest to ready the U.S. for an impending war. Again, he's very much influenced by what now, we should note the two sides in America during this time period, because this wouldn't be U.S. history without looking at the home front. We have the isolationists and interventionists. Now, isolationists, much like those in World War One, were appalled by the departure from neutrality. They wanted the U.S. to remain truly neutral. They wanted their Fortress of America ideal, and argued that Germany was not a threat to the U.S. Essentially, they argued that what happens across the pond, so to speak, is their business. Now, by 1940, England remained the only active opposition to Hitler but was running out of money. That's when FDR calls for a change in their policy to the Lend Lease Act. Again, it's underlined for a reason. You do need to expressly know the Lend Lease Act. All right, so when we talk about prior to our declared war, you have cash and carry and Lend Lease as the major policies that FDR pushed for in World War II to allow us to give supplies to the Allies. Now, under the Lend Lease Act, the U.S. could sell and or lend war supplies to the nations. Congress put $7 billion to allow England full access to the U.S. arms. Now, when we talk about comparing it to the U.S. cash and carry program, we have just eliminated the cash aspect. All right, so he's just taken off some of the handcuffs around being able to give aid through the Lend Lease Act. Now, England desperately needed help escorting supplies through the U-boat infested Atlantic. If you remember the U-boats from World War One, they were very, very tricky and very deadly in searching out and destroying those supply ships. Now, FDR did control Now, when we talk about going into undeclared war, we actually discuss the process of war before Pearl Harbor. There was a secret meeting between FDR and Churchill, which was almost discovered by the Japanese. There was actually a Japanese patrol ship that was about to open fire. They did not know that FDR or Churchill were on the boat. So I get the shots. Now, FDR brought the U.S. to the brink of war and opened himself up to a lot of criticism, especially when we talk about the growing segment and the majority of Americans which were isolationists. U.S. polls show that 80% of Americans supported neutrality in World War II. They did not want to get involved, especially when we talk about all the misery that was going on during the Great Depression. If you remember from the last video, the New Deal programs did help, but they didn't solve the problem. Now, FDR had to wait for the Axis to make a decisive move, which did happen, as we all know, on December 7th, 1941, a day which will live in infamy. Now, that brings us to Pearl Harbor. We're going to be discussing Pearl Harbor in the next video for Friday's class. And again, this is the official event that leads the Americans to U-turn on that majority of neutrality position to wanting a declaration of war, where America wakes the sleeping giant. So we will talk more about this in class, and I look forward to seeing you guys. All right.